Let's talk about the Xfce desktop. This is free open source software. You can check out their official website, xfce.org. You can download the software from here if you want to actually look at the code. You can read the documentation and get a better sense of what this system can do. We are using it in the context of the Ubuntu Linux distribution. This is the Ubuntu set of software combined with the Xfce desktop. It's all free, open source. You can download the software and use it however you would like to. The website's here. There are other flavors of Ubuntu. Ubuntu itself uses the GNOME desktop environment. There's Kubuntu, which uses KDE. And there's a few others. And Xubuntu is the version that comes packaged with Xfce. All right, so we're going to take a look at the desktop itself, what its basic features are, how it looks, how to get around in it. To do that, I'm going to connect through Ramina with a RDP connection. This is a remote desktop connection to a computer somewhere else. I have the profile already set up here, so I'm opening it up. And sometimes when you first log in, you'll get an error message. Here it is. This is just an artifact of a different problem that we solved. You can always just cancel this if you get it, no big deal. Like every modern desktop system, we're going to have a wallpaper. We just have the default settings here because we kind of use this as a disposable system and we're not going to spend the time customizing it. If you wanted to use it on your home computer or more regularly, then you can configure this to look and feel the way that you'd like. It's a really nice system. It's very lightweight, works very well over remote connections. On the desktop, we got a few familiar icons here. In the upper left-hand corner, we have our system menu. It's kind of like the start menu or the Windows menu in a Windows system. Every operating system is going to have something like this, and this is what Xfce's looks like. By default, it's ready for you to search, so you can look through the categories and hunt for what you're looking for. But if you know what you're looking for, you can just start typing and it will narrow the search based on what you type in. So that's a nice way of accessing software. The upper right-hand corner, we have the system tray. The notifications icon, we have our networking, and there's a few options there. We have the power management on a laptop. This would be a bit more relevant. Sound, again, on a local computer, this would be important to you, and calendar clock time. Okay. Also, Xfce, if you right-click, you get quite a substantial context menu. A lot of different things you can do here. One very common task is to open a terminal. So it's right there on this main menu, easily accessible if you prefer to work this way. And you can also access all the software that's installed in the applications menu. I find this one a little hard to navigate for some reason. I prefer to use the system menu, but it works just fine. And that's the basics of our Xfce desktop. Very simple, very lightweight, easy to use once you know where things are. Okay, so next we're going to talk about how to access the network configuration of the computer. We've got two ways to do this. Through the graphical user interface, we have a tool, and then also from the command line. Take a look at our desktop again. We go to our system tray, and we click on the network icon up there. We can go down to Edit Connections. Here's our network configuration panel. In some cases, you might have more than one networking device listed here, depending on how things are configured and virtual machines and what have you. So you might have to use a little bit of logic to figure out which one you really mean to be looking at. In this case, there's just one, so it's really straightforward. There's a gear icon down here to go to the settings. You can also just double click it, but let's open up the settings. I'll try that again. There we go. Hopefully I can edit that out. In this section, the thing you're most likely going to be interested in is actually IPv4 settings. Now these computers are all set for manual networking configuration. That is, I went in here and typed in this networking information. The other way of getting it is automatic. If I could select this and change it to automatic, then it would use something called DHCP to automatically receive a network configuration. Since we're working with this in kind of a data center context, we want this machine to be at the same IP address all the time. So it's been manually set. Since I'm using a remote desktop connection here, I can't actually edit this connection because it would then disconnect me, and well, that would be a bit problematic. But if I wasn't, if I selected manual, I click add, and then I could type in my network configuration here, whatever IP address, netmask, and gateway. Now it converted netmask to CIDR notation, which is a way of specifying a netmask. You would type in 255.255.0.0. It would convert it to the different notation, but it actually does exactly the same thing. And your DNS server, you'll need at least one, and it's typed in down here. So that's how you would manually configure it. And then you could also come to this panel to find out, well, what is my IP address of this system? So that's the graphical user interface version of our network. We can also access this information to the command line. If you right click and choose open terminal, or you could go to the system menu and then hit terminal there. You can increase the font size, Control Shift plus, make it a little more readable. Now in a Windows system, here you type in ipconfig. That's the command that would show you the network configuration for a Windows system. It used to be in Linux, it was ifconfig for interface configuration, network interface configuration. Some Linux systems still support this, and some use a newer system. So if you're looking up documentation, many sources will talk about ifconfig. It may or may not work on your system. Let's see. No, it doesn't like it. And what it wants you to use is IP and then A for all. Show me all the IP configuration. Your system will always have at least two interface connections. The loopback address, which is listed first here, can be in different order, so don't let the order throw you off. It's always going to be 127.0.0.1. That's just a built-in standard. And a loopback is a way of simply a way for the machine to talk to itself on the network. And our second adapter here is actually our Ethernet adapter. And the thing we're looking for is a line that says the word inet, 10.0.100.9. And then again, this is CIDR notation, which is the modern standard for netmasks. Another little trick you can do here is to filter the information. So it's only showing you the IP addresses. And we can type in IPA, which would just produce the results we're first seeing here. And then the pipe, that's the key that is just above the enter key on your keyboard, shift, and then that key, pipe. We're piping the output of this command to another command, grep, which is pattern matching. And we're going to try to match a line that has the word inet in it. When I hit enter, it's going to show me just those items that have that inet in it. Here's our loopback, IPv6 version of the loopback, our main Ethernet connector, and its IPv6 address. So I don't know if that helps or hurts, but that's another option that you can follow. That's the two ways of looking up your networking configuration. All right. Now we can make a network configuration if we had access to, if we weren't connecting through RDP, through that graphical user interface I showed you. You could make modifications to it. You can also edit it from the command line. It's a bit more complex, easier to make mistakes, so I'm not going to show that at this time. All right, web browser, another critical piece of software. Every web browser, every operating system will have one. And in this case, you go up to our main menu, and web browser is that first item in the favorites list. This will come up by default with Firefox in this system, and it'll generally show you the last thing that you searched for to remember your previous session. So if you need to log into your email or something, you probably want to log out before you're finished using the machine. So the next user who uses it doesn't have access to your account. So that's the web browser, easy enough. You could install Chrome also, but Firefox works perfectly sufficient for everything we'll do in the lab. This is where your home computer, well then you might want to install a different browser, but that's up to you. Okay, so talking about installing software, two ways to do it. And sometimes in the Ubuntu versions, accessing the software installation store can be a little bit strange. In the main GNOME version of Ubuntu, there are multiple options there. Xfce makes it pretty straightforward, so let me show you how that works through graphical user interface, and then we'll take a look at how it works on the command line. All right, so once again, I'm going to go up to my main system menu, and right here under favorites is software. Easy as that. It's going to open up the software store. And now all the stuff that we're going to find here is going to be free at least, and most of it is open source as well. So whatever you see that looks good to you, you can just install, and there's no licensing, commercial licensing at least. There's nothing you have to pay for. And the world is kind of wide open to you. So really very nice system. There's a search function here in the upper left-hand corner. So if I were looking for a program to edit images, type in images and it's going to start searching. Now search isn't too great. It doesn't know when I say image, kind of a thing are we talking about? A graphics image or a software image or a what exactly? So we've got some strange looking results, but GNU image manipulation program, an extremely popular piece of software. It's very similar to Photoshop, and it's really great. I've used it for many years, and I really like this software. Very good quality software. If I wanted it, I'd just click install, it'd download in a couple of minutes, it'd be installed on my system, and I'm done. So installing software is really a piece of cake on Linux. There's commercial software you want to install, then things can get a little bit more complex. You generally have to go to the website of the software that you're looking for, and then read some instructions on how to install software. It can get a little tricky. So the built-in open source stuff, piece of cake. Everything else can be a bit more complex. All right. On the command line, we would go to a terminal. And there's a couple of special things that we have to do. The first is, since we're installing software, we need to have elevated privileges. And to do that in a command line, we're going to use a special command called sudo. It tells the computer, hey, I'm going to run a command, and it needs to be run as the administrator of the system. So whatever command I run after sudo, it's going to ask me to type in my password to verify that I really do have the correct permissions to do this operation. The package manager, it's called, is apt. Since Ubuntu is a Debian-based system, Debian created a package manager called apt. It's very, very nice if you know how to use it, but it is a little bit tricky to get started with. And generally, you need to know exactly what you're looking for. It's not like the software store where you can search by keyword. There's something like that, but it is not as convenient. So in this case, if I wanted to install some software, I'm going to just tell it, hey, install. Sudo, run as administrator, apt. I want to do something with a package manager. And the thing I want to do with it is to install. And then finally, hey, what do I want to install? I want to install Nmap. That's a network scanner. Now again, I typed in sudo, so it's going to ask for my password. That's a normal thing. It's going to go out and search for not only what software is it that this user wants to install, but what associated software will I need to make it work correctly? And is there anything else going on in the system that needs some maintenance? So right here at the top, it's telling me that a package was installed previously and that is no longer required. I could run this command to remove it because, well, the system doesn't need it anymore. And it also knows, oh, hey, the user wants to install Nmap. A lot of the users who use Nmap also use these other packages along with it. And so I'm going to suggest to the user, well, okay, I'm going to install Nmap for you, but you may also want to install ncat, ndiff, and zenmap. I don't need those right now, so I'm just going to ignore it, but it's a really nice system here. Since it is all free open source, it's not going to limit you from what you can get. In fact, it's going to encourage you to do more with it even. Great, now Nmap is installed. I can run a network scan on a device on my network. I type in the command. It's now running some tests against our gateway here, and it's going to tell me what ports are currently open on that system. And that's how you install software from the command line in Xfce and actually any Debian-based system, which is Debian, it's Ubuntu, it's Mint, it's many systems are derived from Debian. They all use apt, and once you learn it in one place, it's going to apply in many other Linux distributions. Great system, well worth learning. And that's the basics of Xfce. We standardize on this desktop here at CTP because for remote access, it consumes the fewest resources. It's generally pretty good looking, pretty well behaved, and it's going to run efficiently over a remote connection.